Welcome to this Roll for Crit preview. Today, we're taking a look at another Valeria Kingdom entry from Daily Magic Games titled Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. Unlike their previous games, you're not the good guys, you're going to be playing as the dark, dastardly villains. In this game, you'll take control of one of the major enemy groups, and you're going to be visiting different shrines in order to gain power so you can enact battle plans to take over Valeria.
Each player will have their own individual board and their own warden piece, and on your turn, you're going to be moving that warden to one of the locations on the main board. Each of those locations are going to have a set of dice on them, dice of different colors with different results showing. It's going to be randomized at the start of the game. When you travel to one of those locations, you are going to take one of those dice, add it to your board, and its number will be important for stuff later on. It also has a small number in the corner, which is a discount number, and that could matter depending on which action you're taking. Let's run through them all briefly. First up, there is the Gem Shrine. From here, you can take a single gem in addition to the die that you choose. You will be able to use this gem to alter your dice later on by either flipping them to the opposite side or by turning them into a color of your choice. Then there's the Magic Shrine. Here you can raise your magic up. You get to gain some magic points on your track. This is a resource that can also be used to affect dice, this time by moving them up or down one value for each magic that you spend this way. At the Magic Shrine, you could also choose to take one of these awards up here. These are also randomly chosen at the start of the game, and if you qualify for one, you're going to place one of your victory markers onto there, and it will be worth more points. Next up is the Champion's Shrine. Here, you can choose to purchase one of the champion cards that is available. You will get a discount based on that discount number on the die, so it might be cheaper. Otherwise, you're going to have to spend a certain amount of gold, which again is tracked via your resource track on your board. And the champions have different abilities depending on which section they come from. It could trigger instantaneously, it could be a passive effect that occurs as the game goes on, or it could be a way for you to gain points at the end of the game. Next up is the Gold Shrine. This is how you get more gold to pay for these things. At the Gold Shrine, you simply receive a number of coins equal to the opposite of the discount number. So if it says -3, you get +3 gold on your resource track. And then lastly on the board, there is the Tactics Shrine. This is where you go to reserve a battle plan, which is very, very important. If you take one of the battle plans from here by paying an amount of gold for it, again, possibly receiving a discount, then no one else can claim that plan, and it's up to you to be able to resolve it later on.
Speaking of later on, camp. This is on your own board, and when you move your warren there, it's time for battle. Once you go there, you'll have to decide between either any of the battle plans available on the table or one of the ones in your personal reserve. If you choose one of the ones on the board, you do still have to pay its gold value. Now, in order to complete it, you need to have dice matching the values on the symbols. So for example, if there was a red symbol and a green symbol, you need to make sure you have a die of one that's red, one that's green. Now, there are ways to get around that. You have a special ability to make dice wild, or you can spend gems to either flip a die or make it a wild die. Once you have that, you're going to add up all the dice values, plus any bonuses from either on your board or from paying magic or your champions. You're going to look at that number and see what it equals on the little scoring chart. Now, do remember, you have an influence marker, and your strength technically cannot go above that. So even if you were able to hit 20 strength, but your influence is at 11, you're only scoring as if you had 11. You're going to get that many points. Then you're going to take one of your victory tiles on your board and add it to your campaign board. This is important because the campaign spots have circles and diamonds. Now, these circle spots are the areas. You cover that up, and if your whatever battle plan you're doing match something in there, for example, if it had 2-axe symbol and you cover the one with 2 axes on it, you're going to get some points on that, usually 2. But if you put it next to something else, that's where the diamonds come in play. Those are chain values and gives you an extra bonus. So you sort of want to link up your campaign path, so to speak. Once you do that, you're going to actually unlock abilities that were underneath those victory tiles. So that could be being able to carry more dice, increase the value of resources you're allowed to have, or more reserve spaces. You're going to keep going until someone has captured 7 battle plans. Everyone gets an equal number of turns. You count up points and see who is the truest evil overlord of Valeria.
Yeah, so as you can see, we played this using the tabletop simulator version of the game, but as far as I can tell, perhaps with some tweaks to rules and things, but in terms of the look of the components and the artwork, it seems very much in keeping with past Valeria games, same great style of fantasy artwork that we love. That all looks, to me, more or less finalized, but I'm sure there may be some tweaks, of course, as things go on. Again, we don't have a physical copy of the game, so things are going to be different. But definitely, if you're familiar with Valeria, you'll be at home with a lot of the different symbols and things that are involved here. But it feels pretty different in some regards. Now it is all about dice in this one. That's really a huge factor of it. And we've had a lot of fun with these dice manipulation games. And like I think all of the best ones, this one is really not about the randomness of it. You're always going to be able to find a way to choose the die you want or alter it in the way that you need to.
Yeah, honestly, there is sometimes only seeing what it rolls out and make interesting choices. And then there's also, depending on your turn order, you're going to think like, maybe I'll take that. It's not optimal, but I know, for example, Jonathan really wants to get a champion. If I take the last die from the champion pool, he can't go there till the board resets. So there's a lot more trying to plan out a few turns ahead based on your opponent. It's less of collecting up your own area to become big. You really do have to watch out for your opponents.
Each player will eventually unlock their own special ability too, which affects how they can use dice. So, for example, if you're the green player, then you can treat all green dice as wilds. So that's also really important because now, obviously, green dice are a lot more valuable to you, and other players may want to stop you from particularly getting those green dice. And that brings us back to the board because you don't get that ability until you remove the victory marker from on top of your player board and put it somewhere. And that becomes a very interesting thing where, depending on what different players do, one player might be able to have a ton of champions because that's where they chose to take their markers off of to start with, where someone else might be gathering a lot more dice because they made room for that. So that sort of is where some of the asymmetry comes into play. For the most part, you have the same stuff, but once you start growing your board and changing your personal strategies, as well as getting those champions, those are going to alter the types of cards and dice you're interested in going forward.
And of course, the nature of this being the villains really makes it stand out more. You're not going to see, well, maybe you'll recognize some of the art of monsters you defeat. I'm more used to recognizing, oh, that's the paladin or that's the priest and stuff. You don't really have that as much. So it does still feel a little bit different, I guess. It's not as recognizable. It's the same art as the other Valeria games.
Yeah, you're sneaky now, you're mean. They didn't go in the direction, which I appreciate, of the fact that since now you're villains, you'd be more aggressive towards each other. There's not a ton of PvP. The interaction is in taking dice other players might want, things like that, but it feels very fair still.
It usually you don't dogpile one person or something. It's not aggressive as much as truly trying to plan and outsmart your opponents instead of just beating them to a pulp.
Yeah, and I really do think the campaign board is very interesting. It almost adds this element of a skill trees type of feel, which sounds like it would be complicated, but it's not. And the game as a whole is pretty straightforward, and maybe part of it is because we're familiar with these Valeria games, so at this point, some of these things are second nature of knowing which symbol means what. But once you get into it, you place a guy onto a space, you take a die, you do what it says. I like that it puts you in a direction of knowing, I'm going to go for that battle plan, for instance, so I need 2 red dice and a green die. So I'm going to try to tailor my choices and my actions towards getting those things. I like when games guide you in a direction like that. I think it's helpful. So it's called Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. And it's a bit of a departure from the other games, as I think all of the games in this series stand out from each other, at least a little bit. But I think it certainly stands up from our brief play, at least the first impressions, to the same quality level and the same standard of those other titles.
Indeed. I mean, if you like the previous games, you'll probably enjoy this because you're going to get a whole new gameplay style, but still the symbols you remember, so you'll be pretty comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. But you may think otherwise or the same. Either way, we want you to take a look at it. We're going to have a link to the campaign in our description down below. And if you go a little further, that's the comment section. And when you check that out, that's where you can tell us what you think, which Valeria game is your favorite. Aren't you excited to add another one to the collection? Talk to us there. Until next time, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Will.
And this was Roll for Crit.
Catch the latest from Roll for Crit by liking and subscribing and supporting us on Patreon.
You're not a hidden traitor, are you? Come on, like us.